Greetings. Greetings to the 310 tribe. Hopefully you guys have had a great weekend. You're rested, made it through Tish B'Av, and disappointed that we're still here. Hey, good to be with you guys tonight. Coco Bear got you as number one of my moderators, Kelly, Catalin, Gloria Minix, Lisa, Nelson, Mountain Skies, Joe, I see you. Mountain Skies, I got you. Just Vicky, Gerard, and Stacy, SC Bach, straight up. Hey, everybody. Oh, Keegan, I see you. Good to see everybody tonight. If I didn't call your name, I definitely appreciate see you here. Oh, I see you there, Brooke, Linda, Brandy, Kim, Sparrow. Hey, guys, it's good to be here with you. We got Tyler's coming on right after me, so you guys get a double whammy. I'm going a little early tonight, so to accommodate his schedule, because that's just how I am. Well, hey, man, it's such a busy week. Um, I wasn't even sure if I was going to go on tonight because I had, excuse me, I just had so much going on with work, and I had other things I have to do. And tomorrow will line up and stuff. But um, I was watching a video on, I think it was Facebook or Instagram. I can't remember which. And there's a girl. Her name is Kay. I don't know how to say her last name. Poji. Um, And it's cool to see like the younger crowd taking up the mantle of speaking about things they're passionate about. And I think for the most part, she does a good job talking about biblical prophecy and things like that. And then she does a lot with I guess conspiracy theories and whatnot. But anyway, she's got a huge following, like a million times more than mine, which I'm not anybody anyways, but um she was going on a rant, I guess, one night about once saved, always saved, and how it's a lie. And she was talking about how dispensationalism. She just started listing off all this stuff that was just so uh, ridiculously wrong. It was even worse than just somebody come out and saying Darby. It was Darby. It was worse than the Rich Tucker Carlson, John Rich interview. I mean, it was just like one bad trope after another, one misinformation, just um, one of those kind of tried out, or tired, rode hard lies that just gets all over the place, and everybody's just sick of hearing it because everybody knows that's been disproved like a million times. So it's just like, why? Anyway, so I saw that Matt had done a video, Matt from Shepherd for the King, and man, he just did a bang up job of defending the eternal security of the believer. And if you can check out his videos, he's done a series of them on Instagram, and I think they'll probably pop up on Facebook and YouTube, but I know for sure it's on Instagram, and I think he's still on TikTok if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, okay, so that's what got me thinking about the topic tonight. Of just like some basic truths. Basic truths. There's nothing complicated here. There's no hidden conspiracy. There's no agenda. And the only conspiracy I could think of is people, confusing the truth with all this other garbage. So I want to go into depth of about all that, not just that, but like Hollow Earth, King James only, Flat Earth, once saved, always saved. I want to touch on that too. The pre-trib rapture. And I think I have just enough time to kind of squeeze all that in. I got about 50 minutes for Tyler comes on. But oh, before I do, let me do quick admin. I want to shout out for my sister Tracy. Happy birthday! Um, I think most years I think I miss it, or at least I'm late. But today I was on time. I texted her, and I'm giving her a shout out tonight. So happy birthday, big sister! Wednesday I have Dante Ferrigno coming on, and I've put his link on the promo for that for Wednesday. He has a channel called Ferrigno Freedom, but he does a lot with like the carnivore diet and stuff. But he wants to talk about some more kind of basic doctrines of not only just prophecy but theology, Christian theology. So I think we'll probably delve into that most of the night. So um, and then I probably will go on his channel at some point and talk about carnivore, talk about what I've been doing, and just more kind of health stuff related. You've got 2 hours, Pete. Wait, I've got 2 hours. He comes on at 8. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you guys are Central Time. That's right. All right. Well, there you go. So anyways, that's Wednesday. Wednesday the 13th, we have the Technocracy Roundtable with John Holler, Tom Hughes, David Bowen, Pastor David. I'm blanking on his last name. Anyways, the typical group that we do with the roundtable, Patrick Wood and Scott Townsend, and I think Britt Gillette as well. So that'll be on next Wednesday. And then Olive Tree Ministries, I'll be doing an interview there with them on the 19th of August. So more on that. Well, that interview will probably be pre-recorded. I don't know when they'll release it, but anyways, that's my admin for the day. What does he say? Richard says beard is looking good. Pete, didn't take you 3 months. No, it came in faster than I thought it would, and this is only like not even a month. Although my sides, you can't really tell with the I guess you can kind of see it's like 5 o'clock shadow, but it's all gray. So you can't, like, even when the beard comes in a little bit, it's just I'm a silverback or something. I don't know. It's just like all gray. You can't see it. It's like I don't even have it. So I'm just like, why bother? Anyways, yeah, so I'm kind of in a rare form tonight. I'm probably going to piss some people off. I'm sorry. That's not my intent. And I just want to say this up front with whether it's flat earth, hollow earth, King James only. What are the other kind of hot button issues that we have out today? Obviously the position on the rapture and eschatology, but I'm trying to think of some of the other non-eschatological hot button issues. But anyways, if you guys can think of any in the chat, let me know. I, you know, okay, all of this is pretty unscripted right now. I don't even have really an outline. I have a really basic outline. So my thoughts on this are, look, if you want to believe that the earth is flat, man, have at it. That's your prerogative. I'm sure there's some evidence that's compelled you to believe that. And you know what? I don't have an issue with you believing in flat earth. I really don't. And I'm not, look, this is sort of passive aggressive because I'm not addressing this to anybody in particular. I guess I could point it to Kay, the girl Kay Poji or whatever, Haji, and say, look, uh, you're more than welcome to believe whatever you want to believe about the earth. The Bible does not teach that the earth is flat. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I know that you can take some language and some verbiage from the King James version that might appear that way, but look, we have a solar system full of planets that we can look at, and they're all spherical, and even the moon. So either all of that outside is a mirage, it's an illusion, it is a whatever, or it's real. I know flat earthers don't trust NASA. I get it. I don't really trust them either. But there's been enough people and enough other organizations and other countries and other places that have gone off planet and have filmed the earth to know that the earth is a giant ball. I mean, look, if there's anybody in the chat tonight that normally follows me and you hold to this, please, I am not knocking you. I'm not knocking your beliefs. You're more than welcome to believe that. This will be the only time you probably ever hear me on this channel. I mean, I joke about stuff like that a little bit. I have a flat earth joke, but it's not, I mean, it's harmless. I mean, it's just in good fun. I'm not like, it's not vicious or anything attacking people. I'm not questioning anybody's salvation. I'm not like any of that stuff. Um, and I get it. Like some of those conspiracies, especially with the Hollow Earth and the Richard Byrd or Admiral Byrd, voyages down to Antarctica, World War II time frame. I get all this stuff's fascinating. I get it. I know it's interesting, and it's cool to believe that there's more to this reality than what we can just see with our eyes. But the truth is, there is more to this reality than we can see, and it's not. It doesn't have to come from the hollow Earth or from a flat Earth or from a football or donut shaped Earth or any other kind of like conspiracy. The spiritual world is overwhelmingly present. Thank you, Just Vicky. Um, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. The Whether the Earth is flat, whether it's shaped like a pancake, a donut, a ball, a whatever, that has nothing to do with where we are right now in this point in time with the end of the age really racing up to meet us. And not only that, if I mean I'll just say this. I think there are far more pressing issues right now than whether the Earth is flat or whether NASA's lying to us or whether we ever sent men to the moon or any of those kinds of things. Look, we're on a very, very short timeline, and things are you just open your eyes, turn on the TV, look at the news, man, things are racing at a record pace that it's hard for even prophecy guys to keep up with anymore because there's so much happening right now. We call this the convergence, but it's not just the convergence of all these different signs. It's also the speed and the frequency and the intensity of those signs that they're even the most average sign would be like a thunderstorm, right? I mean, that's just a sign of nature. But the fact that these thunderstorms have intensified, due to a number of varying effects, whether we're talking about the underwater warming underneath the Antarctica, which comes from I guess they believe it's volcanic activity. It's releasing these thermal gases that heats up the ice. The ice melts. It doesn't create more fresh water. It creates more salt water because of this underwater volcanic activity. Now, that's the most likely scenario for what's going on with Antarctica. If I were to come out and say, guys, there is a giant Nazi base under Antarctica and they are heating up Antarctica so they can overthrow the world, which is more likely? I mean, which, if I were to come out and say that in any kind of serious setting, which one would take, which audience would take me seriously? I mean, and look, I know what we believe to the unbeliever is insane, like the rapture, resurrection, all that kind of stuff. But we're not basing our belief systems or the validity of our belief systems of scripture based on what the world thinks. I mean, what the world thinks changes, every 6 months, or, now it's sooner than that. Every 2 months, some new thing is happening in the world, some new craze, some new viral, whatever, some new slang word or some new political move. And I mean, there are so many things happening right now. Western Canada's threatening to break away. And this time, I think they're very, very serious about it. Or at the very minimum, they're using it as leverage against Ottawa in the eastern portions of Canada, the government side. You've got Israel up to some crazy stuff. I think the video footage of this Israeli prisoner from October 7th, just the fact that he is literally skin and bones in a tunnel, man, just it was heartbreaking to see that. And Trump had to watch it. And I think that was it for him. He was done. He's like, all right, this is, I think he just sees them as barbarians. And that was the last hope and chance for Gaza to ever, be what it was. That was it, I think. You have a lot of the nations in the world racing right now to approve of a Palestinian state or the PA, while simultaneously asking Hamas to dismantle. Yet they're the same entity. It's the same spirit behind both organizations. And so I don't know where that's going to go, but it seems interesting to me that as soon as Trump makes a decision to move in a particular direction with regards to Israel, something always derails that, and then he kind of is back on his original path of, hey, let's divide Israel, or normalization and all that other stuff. So there seems to be kind of a waffling back and forth between what Trump says because he's reacting to something that's happening over there, and by the time that that ball gets moving in a particular direction, some other thing happens, and then we're distracted with that, and so it's just this constant series of distractions. But the fact that the Antarctic is heating up and that it's doing these measurable effects of like melting the ice, yet not increasing the fresh water surrounding the continent because all that ice is frozen, fresh water. And the fact that the sea itself is becoming more has more saline in it, more salt in it, or the salinity of it is increasing. That's what I meant to say. And the fact that those thermals and all the gases and stuff that are coming out from that are impacting the jet streams that circle at the equator and now is pushing and strengthening the La Nina and the El Nino weather systems that are, making the storms that we normally get far more intense than they normally would be, and which is, part and parcel why the tornado season we had was insane. I mean, this tornado season was crazy. And I live at the bottom end of Tornado Alley. I mean, that's where we live, that's where my home is. But like, I mean, just the fact that we had so many and they were just super intense this year. And I can't help but think that is, part of what's happening down in Antarctica, and all this extra carbon that's being released in the atmosphere is fueling the El Nino, which I think we're moving into, like, we're in this hybrid year between the two, which is very similar to 2017, which we had three major hurricanes that, really caused all kinds of havoc. Maria, Irma, and I think Harvey was 2017. So there is a logical cause. I mean, there's a logical reason to why the storms are intensifying, whether we're talking about the tornadoes or all the flooding that we've had all around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world. I mean, just this was the year of flooding. I mean, it was insane. I think that's going to increase with hurricanes. If what the all this carbon that's being released from underneath Antarctica is affecting and strengthening El Nino and the La Nina jet streams, then we should be in for a pretty intense hurricane season, I would think. So I think that this is only going to escalate. And not only that, but we have this massive increase in earthquakes, and I mean massive earthquakes, 6.0s and above, that triggered a tsunami, which I think that ring of fire is only escalating, it's only increasing. So not so impactful, like if you get a 7.0 off the coast of, say, Russia or Japan, or what did they have, a 8.0? I think it was an 8.0. I can't remember it was, I mean, it was large enough to trigger a tsunami, but Japan and I think the Kamchatka region of Russia there are pretty used to earthquakes, and most of the stuff they build can kind of handle it up to a point. But when you have that same strength earthquake happen in a third world country like Haiti, or pick a country. I mean, there's plenty around the Ring of Fire. It would be absolutely devastating. Like, I mean, Haiti back in 2010 got hit with I think it was a 7.0, and it like killed almost 300,000 people because the infrastructure there in Haiti, like the building codes, nothing was built to code. I mean, just a little tremor was enough to cause all of those concrete cement buildings just to come collapsing down. So more of the industrialized nations that are used to earthquakes or seismic activity have built their, cities and stuff have built up with that in mind, whereas a lot of the poor countries can't afford to do that. And I think that we're going to probably see some massive earthquakes coming up here between now and the end of the year that are going to impact places that are not as readily prepared, and that could include California. I know that California, in terms of like a lot of their bridges and their roads and their a lot of their skyscrapers and things like that are built to code and are able to withstand a certain degree. But a lot of the just normal stores and the normal places and the normal roads aren't built to handle something like an 8.0 that hits or California. And I don't know what the San Andreas Fault or maybe the Juan de Fuca subduction zone off the off the coast of Oregon and Washington. I mean, I don't know what size earthquake that would trigger, but I mean, nothing, nothing is going to surprise me going forward because I mean, we could see an 8.5 tomorrow, or something just crazy. So, all right. Brooke says, haven't they always said California will eventually go underwater? Yep. Yep. Even in the Superman movie, if you remember the original Superman movie, the whole kind of premise behind what Lex Luthor was doing was triggering the San Andreas Fault, and then he bought all the land in the desert that would now become beachfront property. So we've known this for a long time. It's coming. Um, okay, back to the stuff about Antarctica, the heating and the affecting the jet streams and all that, and strengthening the jet streams. I mean, I think when we really dig into what Admiral Byrd found in Antarctica, a lot of that stuff has been stuff added to his diary or added by other people much later on. Certainly, they had some interesting or weird things that happened, but and then sure, the Nazis had interest in Antarctica, and we know the Nazis fled to a lot of places in South America that would protect them and shelter them or give them sanctuary. But do I think there's a Nazi base under there in Hollow Earth? No, no, I don't think that. Do I think there's weird stuff going down there with science? Yes, I do. I think there's probably all kind of weird stuff happening. There's probably all kind of military or uh, intelligence agencies based type of activity going on down there. And there's certainly weird anomalies down there. There's a pyramid down there, for goodness sake. So I think Antarctica probably used to be just a normal continent of some kind in the pre-flood days, and somewhere in the probably between the flood and you know I don't maybe the year 1000 or something, there was probably uh green vegetation or something on Antarctica. So at some point it froze over. I don't know exactly when that is. I know the Earth sits at a tilt, a 23-degree tilt, so that contributes to the extremity of the weather conditions down there, and also it contributes to all of our weather patterns, but especially at the poles. I know the poles are shifting. I know the true north is shifting. So much is I mean, that this is just the icing on the cake. There's so much that's happening in the world that we don't even need to go into all this other crazy conspiracy theory stuff. And again, I love a good conspiracy theory. I'm not against them. I think most of them probably have truth to them, but I also think that people tend to run too far with them. And one of the interesting things I found about conspiracy theories and groups that tend to focus only on those things, they tend to grow very anti-Semitic. And I don't can't explain why that is, other than demonic influences. But all of the if you follow a conspiracy theory long enough, ultimately it somehow ties back in with a Jewish person, and whether it's they're blaming the protocols of the elders of Zion, or they're blaming the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or Karl Marx or who's the guy that founded the Illuminati? I forget his name, but that guy was Jewish. Um, there's plenty of bad Jewish people that came to prominence and wealth, and certainly George Soros, that have come to influence global events. But there's twice as many Gentiles that have done evil and done wicked and done the same exact thing. So I've just noticed that a lot of these conspiracies theory groups and groups that are super skeptical of everything, there's almost kind of this undertow, this undercurrent of anti-Semitism there. You saw it, we saw it, over the years with Tucker Carlson and other conservative influencers. They didn't come out, when Tucker was on Fox, he didn't come right out and say, whatever, what he thought about Israel or whatever. Um, but after he got his own channel, he got financing from Qatar, and he got, his own platform and everything. You just see him just turning, man, and just turning against Israel. Like Israel is no different than Nepal, or is no different than Somalia, or is no different than you know Paraguay. It's just another country to Tucker. And why? Why does he believe that? He believes that because he was influenced by his church to dismiss Bible prophecy, which, as a byproduct, dismisses Israel as having any kind of prophetic significance. So most of your mainline denominations are all guilty of this. Any church that kind of has in their belief statement of belief is amillennialism or postmillennialism, and most won't even. In fact, most amillennial or postmillennial or preterist churches don't even have anything about eschatology in their statement of faith. They'll say is that um, one day God will end one day God will bring this all to an end, and that's it. That's all she wrote. The whole Looney Tunes. That's all, folks, and that's just some undeterminable, undefinable future. Some hundreds. It could be 100 years from now. It could be 1,000 years from now. There's no way to know, and that's what they believe. They just think that this world is just going to keep going on the way it is. And of all the people in our age that I think are the most tone deaf and the most blind to what's going on is the clergy from most of these churches. And part of amillennialism and part of postmillennialism's draw is this idea that we are the kingdom right now, and it's our job to build the kingdom. And if you're amillennial, you're spiritualizing everything. You're a king right now, you're ruling right now, but really you're ruling spiritually, and or you have to pay homage to the vicar of Christ because he is God's representative on the earth. Or if you're not Catholic, you might um, hold to some kind of like really reformed theology that dismisses prophecy, and your focus is building the kingdom in a kind of more of a post-millennial mindset, that the church has to kind of restore the nation and then restore the world before Christ can return. All that stuff. I mean, all of those things have the common feature of dismissing Israel. And since, I mean, you can look at a guy like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or all these other um, so-called influencers that come out, or not so-called, but they're influencers, but they're so-called Christians, come out and they just come out and blast Israel, and it's like they have zero discernment of what the Bible actually says about the nation of Israel. I mean, think about your Bible, right? You get a Bible, like that much is about Israel, way over half in the Old Testament. And even in the New Testament, nowhere does it say that the church is Israel. It never says the church is Israel. And anytime that Israel is mentioned in the New Testament, it's talking about the national Israel. It's talking about the people, the nation of Israel. There's only one reference in, I think, Galatians, where it calls true Hebrews the Israel of God, or something like that. And even that statement is taken out of context. And one of my underlying principles that I picked up from Jack Kinsella many, many years ago was that you don't interpret difficult passages, or you don't interpret um, uh, difficult passages from other difficult passages. You go to the basic underlying principles of the faith, right? So if I were to question, um, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something I could question. I mean, we can talk about the second coming. I mean, when you got if you're trying to build your eschatology off simply the Olivet Discourse, of course you're going to walk away with this idea that we have to endure through the kingdom. But that's in order to do that, you have to ignore everything that Paul wrote, everything in Revelation, everything in the other epistles. You simply have to throw those things out if you're going to embrace this idea that the church has to go into the tribulation, because you're only using the Olivet Discourse. It's super easy to make the Bible say whatever you want it to say. I mean, it is. I mean, people have been doing that forever. They make the Bible say whatever they want to say. It's damn near impossible. Excuse my language. It's dang near impossible to make the Bible say what you want it to say, but not contradict any other doctrine. And it makes me angry because the God gave us the Bible. It's a book. We know what books are, right? We're all familiar with the idea of a book, or at the time a scroll, or he he communicated with us in the most expedient manner that he could, by using himself talking to people, himself coming down in the flesh as a man and living amongst his creation and allowing his creation to crucify him, reject him, and then crucify him. He spoke to us through the apostles. Uh, and these are men, 40 men or so, over roughly 2,000 years, if you're including the book of Job, when I think Job was written closer to the time of Abraham, but it's about 2,000 years right there. And none of these guys contradict each other. Most of them didn't even know each other. In fact, I would say most of the Old Testament writers didn't know each other personally. They knew of each other at times. Daniel knew of Jeremiah, I'm sure Jeremiah knew of Isaiah and the older prophets, but like, they didn't get together at a round table and come up with some idea of, or a council of some kind, and come up with, like, how are we going to write the Bible? What do we want to say? Well, I want mine to agree with your. Not No. This was all separate nations, separate continents over hundreds of years, spread apart, and God was able to not only save all of that, use the men according to His will to say what He wanted to say, and then protect those documents from being wiped out, because many times anytime these pagan kings or these evil rulers would come in, they would try and get rid of the scrolls and get rid of the word, as if to destroy it so it wouldn't exist, so they wouldn't be judged by it. But it didn't. Obviously God is more powerful than they are, and He is able to preserve His word, and we still have it to this day. And not only that, but now we've got things like the Dead Sea Scroll that validate that the longest scroll, I think it's the scroll of Isaiah, it matches almost identical with our modern version of Isaiah, one of the most instrumental and critical prophecy books we have in the Bible. I mean, how much does God have to keep showing and proving Himself over and over and over to everybody? I mean, we basically know where Noah's Ark is, and we have a good idea of that boat-shaped configuration on top of Mount Ararat seems to, match the biblical size and description of the ark. We are finding stuff every day in archeology validating that the Bible is true. I found a throne not too long ago, a year or two ago, with Pontius Pilate's name on it. I mean, we keep finding stuff, and even the stuff that they're finding that is not, Christian or biblical or from Israel or in the land of Israel, seems to validate things like the flood. What's that place in Turkey that has this massive? I can't ever say the name right. It's the anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's got kind of a weird name. Tbilisi? No, Tbilisi is a country in Russia. Anyways, those megalithics. Yeah, Göbekli Tepe. Thank you, Sir Pierce. I can never remember that. Göbekli Tepe. It is a massive. I mean, it is you only see, when you're seeing the pictures, you're only seeing a tiny portion of it. but it's this massive thing that the Turkish government doesn't want to further excavate because it validates the flood. And in my understanding, here's like a tantalizing like theory that I throw out that's it's not conspiracy, but it's certainly a possibility. It's a little bit speculation because I don't know specifically, but in if you think about where Mount Ararat is, if he were to go straight south, he would hit like Baghdad, Iraq. And this would be hundreds and hundreds of miles, right? But that's the straight south. But if he were to have gone to Göbekli Tepe, which is from where Mount Ararat is, it would be kind of to the west and south a bit. You have where I think is the traditional place for the Tower of Babel, because it was flat and it's the I can't something triangle there in northeastern Syria. It starts with a K. The I want to say Kabuki, but it's not Kabuki. It's the K something triangle. Anyways, but that's where a lot of people think that that's where the original Tower of Babel was. And so when you see that it says in the scripture that Noah that they journeyed from the I think they journeyed from the east and they settled and you can't go east if you're going straight south to where modern day Baghdad is, and that just south of Baghdad is the site there in southern Iraq that has that big kind of pyramid structure down there. And I don't know why I cannot think of anything tonight. I think I've used my brain so much today. I think I've used up all my brain cells. But anyways, that pyramid is where they traditionally think of the Tower of Babel. But that I've never thought that. I don't think that's still. I think if you look at Noah's flood and how the earth was covered with water, and he lands on a mountain because there's land there, and now there's green grass is starting to appear and trees and bushes and things because the dove had come back with the branch or whatever. Um, but if you think about how water recedes, right? Think about a flood. I mean, water just doesn't disappear instantly. I mean, it takes time to recede. And if you look at southern Iraq was a marshland for, I mean, just up until like the 1950s and 60s or 70s when Saddam Hussein's father began to drain the marshlands to get all the Shia locals out of there. They had the Shia living down there in like these kind of, I don't know, marsh huts or something. There was like thousands of them. So they drained the swamp to get rid of them. But if it was swampy then, I mean, in that area is like, not much higher than sea level. You got to think that the water right after the flood was still, most of that place was probably still underwater. So, and not only that, but I mean, why would you pass a fertile farming ground and land that was, um, flat and can easily, live on or make, some kind of a living, at least temporarily? Why would you leave that to go move into a swampy kind of desert, muddy area that's like 1,000 degrees and mosquitoes and everything? So I don't know if it was like that hot then, but um, oh, that reminds me, that's where the Antarctic came from because there was an ice age after the flood, but I'll have to do more research onto that. Okay. Anyways, all that to say that there's plenty of stuff in the Bible that can fascinate and hold our attentions. We don't have to go chasing after all these other rabbit trails that just lead us off into stuff that has nothing to do with the Bible. It introduces a bunch of confusion into your logic. If you start thinking about Tartaria or the mud floods and all that, that stuff is easily debunkable. I think I just created a word, debunkable. I don't, am I right? Has somebody else said that word before? Debunked. Uh, but anyway, so that's, I think some of those things are interesting for like a 5 minutes, but to devote any more than time to that, I think you run the risk of, moving in some pretty shifty company. And that goes the same with all of the cryptid stuff. And, look, I am a huge cryptid fan in terms of like, I think it's interesting. I don't think they're mammals by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think things like Dogman and Bigfoot and Chupacabra and all that stuff, I think they're real. I think they're demonic entities of some kind or some kind of a hybrid being that can, is interdimensional because, if Bigfoot was really like just a mammal, some kind of a primate that time forgot, we would have found bones, we would have found scat, we would have found, hair, we would have found carcasses, we would have found, all kinds of stuff. Not to mention the fact that we have so much cameras and so many people out there trying to capture a picture of these things, and they just somehow know that somebody's 1,000 feet away from them with a camera. Like, how would they know that if they were just simply an animal? But these things are incredibly elusive. But yet enough people have seen them that you can't dismiss it out of hand. At the same time, um, you know, I we know that the fallen angels that intermarried with humans in the Genesis 6 time frame, they had offspring, and their offspring were giants. We know that the flood wiped all of those giants out, but we also know that they came back after. Let me get my Bible. Hold on real quick. In Genesis 6, 4, I can't remember the exact translation. One of the translations, I want to say it's the ASB, but I'm not entirely sure. In Genesis 4, it says, there were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, and those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Now, when you read it there in most translations, you get that word when. There were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. With that word when, in the English word when, that's being translated from the Hebrew word is Asher, and Asher can also mean whenever. So in the context of this, I think the ASB does it the correct translation. Let me read it that way. There were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward, whenever the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So whenever these angels came into the women, they had these crazy offspring. And we know they're giants after the flood. We know that obviously the Israelites had to deal with a whole mess of them. Like a whole bunch of different tribes, like the Amorites and the Amalekites and the I don't know all the ites, but there's at least I think 7 or 8 different kind of giant tribes. And as Joshua was going in and beginning to wipe out and clear out the land there, a lot of those giants fled. They created boats of some kind and they went to Cyprus. And then they went to Malta. We can see the path of these things because they tend to leave like these megalithic structures everywhere they go. And if you follow like Eli Marzulli, I think Timothy Alberino, probably those two, and Mondo Gonzalez, I think have studied that movement it seems like how they moved away from the promised land or Canaan at the time, and they just got away. They knew where they were getting wiped out. And that's how we know that somehow down the road, hundreds to thousands of years later, those Nephilim ended up in the Americas, and the Native American tribes have stories, history, oral traditions, all that stuff going back, and not just one tribe, a bunch of different tribes have encountered these beings. Either they're all lying, or they're all hallucinating on, mushrooms or something, or they actually had to deal with these things. These things were real threats to them. And anyways, all that to say is that there's plenty in the Bible that can fascinate us without having to chase after the stuff the world's chasing after. And the stuff the world's chasing after, it almost always leads you to some kind of anti-Semitic bent at the end of it. At the end of wherever that journey, that rabbit hole is going, it leads to some kind of anti-Semitism. They're going to try and blame the Jews on all the problems. And if they don't, a majority of the people that hold those views do. And so you're just kind of in the minority anyways. So, okay. I told you tonight was going to be a bit of a rant. So let me go to, King James only. Okay, so I know there's some folks in here that probably are King James only. Again, if that's your prerogative, man, more power to you. I salute you. I don't have any issue with the King James Bible. I have a New King James, and I like the New King James. I've always used it. I know, I know from between the King James and the New King James, all of the seemingly issues that words that are left out, et cetera, et cetera. I get all that. I know the Masoretic text. I have studied the translations over the years. I am not the expert like say Lee Brainerd or somebody like that, but I have studied them and I am pretty familiar with how we got the modern translations. Now, I don't have any issue with somebody using a King James and you being 100% loyal to it. My only issue is when I don't know. Does anybody remember? I think his name was Mike Hoggard. Hoggarty. No, was it Hoggard? I don't know. He was a Bible teacher from a long time ago. I don't even know if he's still online or not. But he had a um, he had a stack of Bibles. He was doing his live stream one day, and he's King James only. And he had a stack of Bibles. He had a New King James. He had a NASB, RSV, NIV, all these translations. And he just threw them in the trash. He goes, "This is garbage. This is," he just went on this tirade about blasting these other translations as if they were just spewing demonic falsehoods. And that's the take I got from it. And I'm like, dude, you're a freaking idiot. You're an idiot. You know that? I've used a Jehovah Witnesses Bible to witness to a Jehovah Witness and show them that they're wrong. I've used a Mormon Bible against Mormonism. I can use an NIV to share the gospel. I can use the King James. I can use a New King James. I can use a NASB. I can use an RSV. I mean, good grief, man. I know there's some terrible translations out there. I'm not saying that every translation is perfect. I'm not saying that. But to simply throw them in the trash and act like they're demonic because you're only King James and that's the only thing that can save anybody. What happened to all the people that came before the King James translation was invented? Did they all just die and go to hell because they didn't have a King James English Bible? I mean, come on. I love the King James. Don't get me wrong, but when and if you want to disparage every other translation, and again, I'm not talking to anybody in particular in the audience. I'm just speaking somewhat angrily, I guess. Um, it's like their mind has slammed shut, and they are no longer able to reason anymore. Um, very similar to DTS, Donald Trump syndrome, or people that are so anti pre-trib rapture that they just, I mean, you just mention the word, you're like rapture, and they just lose their minds, their heads exploding, and they're just like, "Ah." And those people because they email me all the time, and they leave comments all the time. All they want to do is argue that I'm wrong and they're right. Man, you know what? I'm sure I'm wrong on things. I don't think claim to have everything, but I know I'm right on the rapture because the Bible only teaches one position on the rapture. And it goes back to my former principle. You can make the Bible say anything you want it to say. It's it's impossible to make a false doctrine not contradict any other doctrines. It's going to contradict them because it's that whatever you're doing to it to make it false now does not align with everything else. There's no synchronicity between those things. They are now asynchronous. They are not flowing together because you've decided to add in this new thing, this new spin, or maybe an old spin. So to me, it's just like, if you want to be King James only, man, have at it. I am never gonna, I am never gonna like disparage you But if you're King James only, then you throw every other Bible in the trash and you start saying every other translation's demonic, and then that is when I have an issue with you, because um, that is pure ignorance, and it's okay to have your favorite translation. We all have our favorites, but to say my translation is the only true one, and all the rest of you are reading, demonic, books of the dead or whatever, because you're using an ESV or an NASB or NIV. Come on. Furthermore, if anybody wants to debate me about King James only, you're only allowed to debate me if you speak in King James only. You have to say the these and the thous with everything you say, everything, even when we're not debating, just normal dialogue. If it's that perfect, why are you not speaking it in everything that you do? Apparently, it's not that perfect. And again, I love the King James. I just don't speak 1600s or 1700s anymore. I don't speak 2021 or 2025 skibbity and all the other slang that's going on now. Like I mean, come on, culture is always changing. Languages are always changing. Um, I mean, you couldn't even read the 1611 King James. It's changed numerous times. It has numerous revisions in it, and it has mistakes in it. The King James Bible has mistakes in it, clear mistakes, clear grammatical mistakes. That one of them, I think, is it's something to do with the hookah, like the shelter, and the way that was translated in the King James was incorrect, because now we have modern, with the modern technology and the archeology and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the things that we found, we're able to bounce modern Hebrew off of that old Hebrew, and we can figure out like what exactly is the word mean. So we know that the taking of that word there, I think it was out of Isaiah, if I'm not mistaken. It was the same passage that Joseph Smith, when writing the Book of Mormon, he grifted off of the Bible and copied it, plagiarized it off the Bible, and it's the wrong use of the word. And he's trying to say that that word in that the Book of Mormon or whatever he got it, from the angel Moroni, or from these invisible tablets that came from the 4th century. So, I mean, even the mistakes in the King James are being used to invalidate things like Latter-day Saints or, the Mormon theology. So it's things like that that I'm okay with there being mistakes in it, because sometimes it's used for good. Um, but we have a far better understanding of Hebrew now than we did in the 1600s. So, do I think that the 16 or the original King James is the most accurate translation? No, I don't. I think it's a great translation, and I think it's done an amazing job of being a standard for 400 years in terms of um, proclaiming the truth. But so have the other translations. And if there are words that are missing out of, say, the King James that are not in other translations, sometimes I take issue with it. But also they're looking at it. Okay, we can't find these in the earliest documents. That's whatever the word is, right? And some translation like, we can't validate that word was actually written by Paul or written by Isaiah or written by Luke or whoever. Um, it seems like some scribe added it in or something. So look, people have been studying this methodically, religiously for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. People that are far more intelligent than anybody making these arguments right now. I think the best scholars in Hebrew and Greek, if that were true, they would also be only King James only. And many of them acknowledge that, they might prefer, especially the older ones, might prefer King James. That's just what they grew up with, but that's a preference. That's not a stamp of approval that it's the most accurate version, because we know it's not. King Kim said I drank too much coffee today. Maybe. I don't know. Okay. Let's see. I'm reading something here. Okay. I'm pretty sure that I pissed most people off tonight. Sorry. My plan was not to make everybody mad. It was, or some people mad, I'm sure. Pretty mad at me. Look, again, if you're King James only man, I nothing but love for you. But don't come at us and be like, your Bible's from hell. Come on, that's just silly. All right. Talked about flat Earth, King James only. Once saved, only saved. All right, once saved, always saved. Um, so kind of part and parcel with a lot of these theories that are out today and the influencers that are promoting them. And I'm talking about the Christian ones. I'm not talking about secular folks, but it's the it's how a lot of these things kind of run in packs together. And I don't fully understand it. I don't understand, and this may be part of the mystery of iniquity, but like when you have let me put it this way. If I were following a particular channel or even let's go back to Gab, right? Gab was supposed to be the alternative to Twitter back when Twitter was super woke and all that. And a lot of people went over to Gab, and then quickly Gab became pretty farther right than what I think the average conservative was really comfortable with. And then almost immediately started in the very anti-Israel tropes. And what's that guy? What's that guy's name? The medicine man, or the well, he did a lot. He was really really vocal against the vaccines and all that. Scott something. Anyways, Scott Peters. No, but anyways, I mean, he is like incredibly anti-Semitic, but he's in that kind of ilk that's kind of hijacked the part of the conservative movement. And I think that right now, if Israel were reliant upon the church to kind of come and get their back a little bit, they're going to be woefully mistaken, because the church in America has almost, I don't want to say completely, but a large segment has moved away from supporting Israel. They've moved away from supporting um, this Genesis 12:3 promise that God made. And it we saw it really become really evident after October 7th. There was that small window of time when people were kind of mourning Israel, then immediately it was like, oh, it's Israel's fault. And you saw the conservatives that believe in that, or that are leaning into that idea that Israel is no more significant today than is Nepal or Somalia. That whole section of the conservative movement, the wing or whatever, is only growing. And it's growing because you got influencers like this girl Kay, and you got Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, I think his name is Fuentes or something. I don't know. There's a bunch of these guys that are very prominent. But then behind them, you have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of pulpits who don't stand with Israel either. And we can't go into the whole congregations because we don't know what everybody individually believes, but it's either from the pulpits, it's either they're speaking out against Israel, or they're only addressing Israel from the biblical Old Testament time period, and no Israel beyond that is relevant. And no Israel after Christ is relevant to them, right? Or they are just they just don't talk about Israel at all. I mean, I was in church. I think I watched churches after October 7th. Within the next couple of weeks, nothing. So, I mean, really, once the church is removed, then Israel is truly going to be on its own. Now, once saved, always saved is also kind of thrown in those camps where if the same groups that kind of center around or orbit around flat Earth theories also are increasingly anti-Semitic, and also seemingly it seems kind of weird that it's lumped in with this group, but they seem to be very anti once saved, always saved, or the eternal security of the believer. And I thought, like, why is that? Like, why does that what does that have to do with flat Earth? You know, or only King James? And they get so here's why I'm tying the King James only in with the flat Earth stuff, because they can only build a biblical case from the King James. They can't build it from any other translation. So, and it's because the English language at the time and how they referred to things. Um, anyways, that's kind of the tie-in with that. But the idea that the believer can lead a true born again, Holy Spirit filled believer can lose their salvation. It seems to, I don't know, it's kind of lumped in with all these other topics, and it seems odd that it's there, but it is, and it's something that's also being spread by these big influencers like this lady I was talking about, who's probably got millions of followers over different media streams or platforms or whatnot. And she's just railing on dispensationalism, just kind of out of the blue, and then railing against once saved, always saved, and I posted on there like, look, I mean, our salvation is not incumbent upon our good works. Our good works cannot save us. On the other side, the flip side, our bad works cannot unsave us. Our salvation is not dependent upon us. It's dependent upon what Christ did on the cross, his finished work. He's the only perfect man that's ever lived. All of the rest of us, every one of us, from Adam and Eve and Abel and everybody on, we're all sinners. And even the best that we have to bring is as filthy rags to God. There's nothing good there's nothing that we have that he needs. The only thing he wants is fellowship with us, and that's through a relationship. And he knows, because God's standard of righteousness is perfect. He knew no normal human could ever attain that standard of righteousness. It took Christ dying on the cross, covering us with his blood. That's what makes us righteous, not my own personal righteousness, not the fact that I tithe this much, or I go to this church, or I belong to this denomination, or that I'm a good husband, or I'm a good wife, or I'm a good son, or a good daughter, or whatever the case is. None of those things have anything to do with my eternal security. Where am I going to go the minute I stop breathing? Do you think Christ trusted us, our salvation, with knowing how broken we are? You think he trusted us with our own salvation? Well, none of us would get saved. We would all fail, because we are incapable of saving ourselves based on our works, because that's all we have. We have works. We have works and we have faith. What else do we have? What else can I offer God? He doesn't need anything I have. He doesn't need anything that I can make or produce. He doesn't need my money. He doesn't need my shiny, brand new cathedrals. I mean, he doesn't need those things, because he created everything. He spoke everything into existence. He controls all that anyways. I'm just giving him what is his. What he wants from us is what is unique to us. And the fact that humans, unlike angels or animals or plants or stars or planets or anything else, we were created in the image of God, and we were also given free will to choose him, to choose life over death. And the only way that we can have life, eternal life, is through Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to say this too, and I don't want people to get confused on this. And this is just my thoughts on it. I'm not saying this dogmatically, like you have to believe it, or else, I'll never talk to you again. In the Old Testament, Jesus hadn't come yet, right? So they could not be saved by what he's already done. They were looking forward to a redeemer coming. I mean, we get that in the book of Job. I mean, and I think, again, I think Job's probably the earliest book written. And even he was proclaiming that he would see his redeemer with his own eyes. And so there was always a belief that God would rescue mankind and that God would redeem mankind. But how that form took was a mystery. And in the Greek use of the word mystery is mysterion. It's something that it's something that exists, but has not been revealed yet. And it's just like if I had an envelope, and inside that envelope, I know what's in the contents of that envelope. It could be a check for $1 million. But if I'm handing it to somebody and they have no idea what it is, they don't even know the context of what it is, they can't know what's inside of that until they take it and then they open it. And I give it to them. I'm giving it to them. That's what we call the free gift of salvation. It's free for us, but it costs God everything, right? He had to become a man, live a sinless, perfect life from start to finish, without even a evil thought or letting his mind wander one time. And he was still rejected by the people that he came to offer the kingdom to. And if you read through the Gospels, and you particularly Matthew, look at what he says to them about the kingdom in the Sermon on the Mount, or in Matthew 13, or other passages. Earlier to the midpoint of his ministry, when he was still preaching, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." Because we know at a certain point his ministry changes. The focus changes. Now it's focused on the rejection is official, and now he's talking about he's going to die and he's going to be buried and he's going to rise again on the third day. And he's talking about picking up his cross, you picking up your cross and following him, and all that kind of language. But now that's the ministry has shifted tone and focus to what lies ahead and what he's about to take care of and what he's about to do, and the joy set before him, right, as it says in Hebrews. But the Old Testament folks were not saved like you and I are we are place our faith on the finished work of Christ on the cross. At that moment, we are sealed by the Holy Spirit and sealed until the day of redemption, which is the rapture of the church, right? And so they didn't have that, but the principles and the stages of salvation still existed. They're still the same thing. Salvation has always been by grace through faith, right? There's always a point of justification. There is a point of sanctification, and at a future point, there will be a glorification. That didn't change in the Old Testament. So how were Old Testament people justified? They were justified by their faith in God. And they only knew what at the time Scripture gave them, right? If you lived in a time and you only had the first 5 books of the Bible, that's all that existed. Joshua wasn't written yet, Ruth, First Kings, Second Kings, Chronicles, none of the rest of that stuff had been written yet. And let's say you only had the Torah. Well, I mean, what are you going to know about God from the Torah? Are you going to know about Jesus from the Torah? Now, if you're a good student, you could go back and you could read Genesis 1:26, and you could say, well, why is God referring to himself in the plural? We know that angels aren't created in the image of God because there are all different kinds of angels. I mean, we have angels with like 4 faces, angels with eyes all over their wings, and we know that there are angels that look like men, but I don't know if that's how they present themselves to us, but how they look normally from what people describe in like near death experience is that these angels are crazy tall. I mean, they're massive, they're big, like 10 feet tall. And they're not, I mean, like, basketball player, tall, skinny. They're like my build, they're, just a normal build, but they're like, proportionate to 10 feet or more. Incredibly powerful, just bursting with light. If one of them manifested right here, I know there's one right here right now, but if he decided to like appear, I'd probably fall over and have a heart attack. I mean, like, my chair would go backward, my feet would go up, and it'd be a very awkward, quiet live stream from there on out. But like the point is that they were not created in the image of God. So who is God referring to when he says, let us make man in our image? And who is God referring to also in the plural in Genesis 11 at the Tower of Babel? Let us go down and see what men. If you were like a rabbi or somebody that still adheres to Judaism, you'd say, well, God is referring to himself and the angels. Okay, well, the angels again were not made in God's image like we are, and they have free will, but there's no manner for reconciliation for them if they violate that free will. There's no way of salvation for them. Christ did not come to die for the angels. He came to die for men. So when angels fell, there was no way to reconcile them back to glory once they rebelled against their creator. So they're stuck. And they're doomed, and they know they're doomed, and they're doing everything they can to thwart the Bible from fulfilling the prophecies that were foretold thousands of years ago. And part of how they're doing that, at least they're not stopping God from doing what he wants to do, but they are able to impact the churches by promoting false teachers and allowing these false teachers to rise to prominence in these different sections and groups and denominations. And these guys wield incredible influence, and they influence hundreds of thousands or to millions of people with bad theology. And that's how Satan is now working in and through mankind to thwart the spread of the gospel or to water it down to no effect. And he especially hates prophecy because he doesn't want any of this to come true. He doesn't want to spend the eternity, he did 1,000 years in the abyss, and he definitely doesn't want to spend eternity in a lake of fire. None of those fallen angels do. Will do anything. They know hell is more real than any person alive. And they fearful. They are scared, terrified of this. And what do desperate people do? Desperate people do desperate things. What do desperate fallen angels do? They do desperate things. They will do whatever they can to not go there. They will kill any child. They will massacre families. They will destroy towns. They would destroy this planet in a heartbeat if they could, if God allowed them. But they can't because the restrainer the restraining ministry of the Holy Spirit is still holding things in check. But the rapture is going to remove that restraint, and it's going to be hell on earth. And I promise you, you do not want to be here when that happens. And we talk a lot about, the tribulation saints and how there'll be a massive harvest on the backside of the rapture because of how mind-blowing it's going to be and how it's just going to disrupt everything and really throw the world. It's something the world has not seen before. And we know that from that there will be a massive soul harvest, but man, it is going to come at a terrible, terrible price. It will come at a terrible price. It's not simply getting your head cut off. It's probably going to be years of living just like a rat and just eking by and trying to live in a society that is completely 100% lost its mind and now given over to not just demonic influence, but demonic beings themselves will begin to manifest. And, here's a theory, right? That's not really a conspiracy theory, but we know that there's objects that are flying by Earth. I think the one is called Atlas something. There's Mamu or whatever I can't think of the name, but there's been a couple, right? And this Atlas is way bigger than the Omamu Moro. I don't even know the name of it, but the other one that came by the Earth. And so we only know about these objects because our satellites have vastly increased. And we were able to see further and be able to do more and see more than we could in decades past. So we know these things are coming by Earth, and they seem to be on an elliptical that would put them kind of in the general vicinity of Earth. but they also seemingly are not 100% natural, and there's some things about them that they don't seem normal to like a comet, right? Comets have certain types of characteristics and things like that. These objects are just going incredibly fast. Um, we don't, and what they're, I guess they're trying to determine whether these things can change directions. I think they do change directions or slow or speed up or kind of change their speed and whatnot. But I think Satan is going to keep these things coming by because he doesn't know when the rapture is going to happen. So we're going to see this kind of revolving door of these things flying by. And I think that's going to be part of what this deception is, that the rapture happens and these things kind of, oh, that's a ship. And these things will appear, you know? I mean, Satan hasn't been spending the last, I don't know, since Roswell, what, 77 years or so, flooding the world with all this stuff for nothing. I mean, there's going to be some kind of a payoff for it. And I think that the only way that he is going to be able to explain away the rapture is for there to be some type of massive UFO event. And those things don't even have to come down. They can just be in the sky, and people are automatically going to say, "Oh, well, that's what happened to all those people. The aliens took them, or whatever." And what's so important about why we need to talk about the rapture now, and why it's, even though it's not a salvific issue in terms of being able to disagree with somebody on when it happens and stuff like that, we need to talk about it because we need to keep vocalizing this event that's going to happen, so that when it does happen, people are not automatically swept off the shore into the oceans of just lies and delusion by automatically thinking that it's aliens. The only way we're going to counter the um, the demonic delusion after the rapture is by forewarning people now and leaving stuff behind now and talking about it now, so that when it does happen, in as many media's formats as we can possibly do, because they'll shut the internet down. Everything will get shut down, and then it'll probably get turned back on under like Starlink or something, and then Elon Musk will control everything. And who knows? I kind of think I talked with I don't know, a while back with Lauren Karen about that he to me might possibly be like a candidate for false prophet, or at least one of the kings or something. He'll play some role in that. He controls too much right now for him not to. Now he could always die tomorrow, and then somebody else takes his place. But for right now, he seems like a candidate to be a role player in the last days. We don't know exactly what role that is, but she and I talked about that, and I certainly think that even though I like the fact that he bought Twitter, and that he kind of let free speech back on the platform a little bit, or more than it was. Um, all the everything he's doing he's preparing for the end, and he thinks the end is going to come with like the singularity, and that it will turn on Skynet, and then unless he can match that intelligence by implanting the neural link in his own head, and kind of putting himself on the same level as AI, he doesn't think he's going to be able to compete, and that's what terrifies him. Which is why all the companies that he has is geared up toward Mars, or colonizing the moon and then Mars. Tesla, that car was not designed to drive on Earth. It was designed to drive on Mars, in Mars's atmosphere. The Boring Company, the tunneling company, I mean, that is obviously going to be very handy in Mars. Um, AI, his AI program, what is it, Grok or whatever? He has a Grok to run his robots, and the robots are then launched on his um, SpaceX, rockets, and they go to the moon, and they build this kind of way station. So he's got robots up there doing that stuff, and he's got telepathically, he's guiding these robots from his Neuralink to the Starlink to the moon, and these robots are building the base, they're doing all that stuff and getting everything ready for humans. And that's what he's gearing up to, because he does not think that this planet is safe anymore. There's too many existential threats that could happen for him. And it's not just him; it's Bezos and all the rest of these billionaires that have more money than they know what to do with. So um, you've got billionaires building bunkers in Hawaii and New Zealand, and all over the U.S. and in other places. I mean, they're preparing for the end. Why aren't churches screaming from the pulpits, the end is coming, the end is here. Just think about that for a second. I mean, we're not asking pastors to stand on the street corners with, the sandwich boards, saying the end is nigh or anything like that, but being able to vocalize and talk about that and incorporate that into their sermons as something that is coming. How many sermons have we heard that they even mention that? No, none of them do. I mean, very few. You have these little bitty independent churches, which I think will probably be, if they're fundamentalist, probably King James only, which is okay. Again, I don't have any issue with that. Um, you have Calvary chapels. You might have the random churches here and there. David Bowen, Sunshine Church in New Mexico. John Holler's church. All the different churches that are tied with prophetic ministries to some degree, or come out of denominations that have that. I think that they're more attuned to it, but those churches are dwindling. I mean, they are rapidly disappearing from the face of American landscape, and they've already disappeared from Europe and other places. But the last kind of vestige of um, true biblical, um, I don't want to say true biblical Christianity, because we know there are Christians around the world that are suffering under all manner of horrors. But at least in the United States, the representative of the Philadelphian church is, you know, becoming extinct almost. It feels like that. There are a lot of churches. Don't get me wrong. Still, I mean, but churches are shutting their doors quicker than they can open them. But what I'm talking about is that there's still a lot of churches, but how many of those churches actually teach the Bible, 100% through, and treat it seriously? The literal, grammatical, historical interpretation, hermeneutics. Man, very few, very few. I don't even know how it is in Australia. I know Australia is worse. New Zealand, Europe, Canada. Um, you know, it reminds me of that passage where Jesus was saying, in Luke 21. Let me read it. Talking about the just judge. Says, and he looked up and he saw the rich putting their, speaking of Jesus, and he looked up and he saw the rich putting their gifts. This is verse 1, I'm sorry. 21 verse 1. And he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury, and he saw also a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites. He said, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all." I'm going to stop there real quick. God looks at the intent. He looks at the heart of what we're doing, not at what we're doing, but the motivations behind what we're doing. And that's something that you and I can't really see. And that goes back to the idea of once saved, always saved. That you know, according to the Bible, when you were born, how you were saved is that you believed on the finished work of Jesus Christ and trusting in Him for your salvation. Right? That's how you are saved. And when you're saved, you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. And it's not just saying those words, because again, anybody can say the words, but He's looking at the heart. He's looking at this old woman here that gave everything she had. Well, for most of us, we would just look at that and say, okay, well, she's poor. She's just putting in 2 mites, or she's incredibly cheap, or whatever. We didn't realize that was all she had, because we can't look into her mind and heart and soul like God can. So let me finish. Um, so he said, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all, for all these out of their abundance have put in offerings for God, but she out of her poverty put in all the livelihood that she had." Then, as some spoke of the temple and how adorned and beautiful the stones and donations were, he said, "These things which you see, the days will come when not one stone shall be left on another that shall not be thrown down." And in that, I didn't get to the judge part. I'm sorry. Am I thinking of Luke or am I thinking of John? Let me see where it is. Let's see, widow. There we go. H-I. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the widow, but it's not the. I think the story that I'm considering is the one where Jesus is talking about the old woman um, that was constantly complaining to the judge, and then the judge was like, "What am I going to do if I don't, handle this woman's problems?" Let's see. It is in. It's in 18:2. I just double check. Sorry, guys. It's taking a second here. Here it is. 18:2. Luke 18:2, not Luke 21. So 18, it says, Then he spoke a parable to them. The men always ought to pray and not to lose heart, saying, There was a certain city of a judge who did not fear God nor regard man. Now there was a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, Get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while, but afterward he said within himself, Though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she wearies me. Then the Lord said, Hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him through though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? And one of the things that I don't know that I've ever heard. I mean, maybe it's been talked about. I don't remember hearing it, but one of the things that I think about with regard to faith on the earth is that prior to the 1800s, um, you know, we weren't most people in the world held to some type of religious faith, and people believed in magic, and they, I would maybe go back to like the 1600s or whatever, right at the time of the age of reason that started to come about. Um, but by the 1800s, people were by and large beginning to trust science more than they were religion or their faith. And then by the 1900s, for sure, and then by the mid 1900s, I mean, you got uh, prosperity breaking out across the United States. You've got the rise of denominationalism. You had a church on all these corners, and people were more concerned. Became very quickly more concerned with their livelihood than they were of their personal faith in God and how that through that they would live their lives. Now it became working. Now it became about making money, and the wives begin to enter the workforce. Wars are breaking out. Life gets busy. Technology, entertainment, all of that stuff is just breaking out everywhere. And now church seems old hat. And I can't think of a time when less people believed in God or some type of had faith than probably today. You know, because if we're counting faith in the one true God, then how much of the world does not even believe in the one true God? I mean, I'd say the majority of the world. If there's like a billion, I think there's a billion Catholics and there's a billion other kinds of like Christians, and then there's a billion Muslims, and then you have the other faiths that began to, Hinduism and whatnot, Buddhism. Um, so out of that, there's only really like a billion. that really truly hold faith in the one true God, in Jesus Christ, and have a good understanding of Jesus Christ. I mean, I would say most of the Catholic Church, not all of it, but most of it is still enamored with, Mary worship and praying to the saints and trying to earn their way to heaven or earn their way to out of purgatory. They're fixated on here and now, and they have their own kingdom here and now through the Roman Catholic Church, which has its own vicar, which is the Pope. And so they have faith in a God. I don't know if they're trusting in him to save them. They're just they at least at a minimum they acknowledge him. Mormons, very devout in their beliefs, but believe in a different Jesus. The Jesus they believe in is the brother of Lucifer, and he's a created being. Or, he's not God. He is a God, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses believe he's a God, not the God. So I would argue that out of the 8 billion people on the planet right now, you've only got, I would say under 1 billion people that actually have a true faith in the true biblical Jesus and are truly born again. I would say that the number is incredibly small compared to the total population. So, okay, I've been going for about an hour and 30 minutes. I'll take a couple of questions, but I do want to be done by the time Tyler gets on. So you guys, if you have time and you have the inclination, can just switch over to that channel. Yeah. All right, guys, I have not kept up with the chat at all. I totally apologize. I'd like to glance over from time and see. Ryan L, it's some kind of where you coming the most, the new thing YouTube, it seems. How are you guys doing? I know I've been rambling on here for on and on and on. I'm gonna look at this Agoff Twitler, so that doesn't even sound serious. Would Jesus support Republicans putting razor wire in a river to prevent refugees like Mary and Joseph from entering Bethlehem or Texas? I bet Jesus would tell the truth about it. What would Jesus do? Be honest. Well, we know from the Bible that we are supposed to treat strangers with kindness and in generosity, etc. But we're also supposed to have walls and borders, and if people come in under good pretenses or honest pretenses, and we do let refugees in. We had those refugees, true refugees, coming in from South Africa who are being persecuted by their government. But if you're talking about the millions of people that were hopping on trains because the Biden administration said, "Hey, we're not going to guard our borders, and you guys can just come in." And what came out of that? You had human trafficking, you had all kinds of trafficking, you had drug trafficking, you had the cartels just explode with violence all over Mexico. Like hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in Mexico because of the cartels. And that's only been exacerbated by weak border policies that we've had, not just under Biden, but under Obama prior to that, and under Bush, again, a Republican. He was more focused on the enemy at 2,000, 3,000 miles away across the ocean than he was on his own border. I think Bush failed. He was not a good president. And if you look at all the things that evil that came through his administration, I mean, the Patriot Act, hello. Um, I don't know. He's not much better than Clinton to me. But so yeah, we're supposed to have walls and borders. I mean, you have a wall around your house, right? And doors and locks. You don't just leave your doors open because you let anybody comes in, even if they need to come in, right? I mean, you let them in for a second, right? And then you kick them out because you don't want to have people living in your house for the rest of your time in the house. Look, I mean, immigration. If you study, you know, geopolitics and that kind of thing. I mean, I got my degree in international relations. I was writing about terrorism and back in the late 1990s. Um, Immigration was weaponized. We saw it used in the Middle East. We've seen it used against Europe by Russia. Um, Turkey's complicit in this as well. So, it, it's one thing if the people are coming in truly need sanctuary, but if they're going to pass over all these other countries that could give them sanctuary, but like, I don't want this sanctuary. I want this other sanctuary over here because it's nicer. Then they're not truly refugees. They're not truly fleeing danger. They're just wanting something better than what they have. And it's human nature. I don't blame them, but you got to come in the right way. I mean, my dad came in illegally the first time and he got deported. He had to come back in legal the second time. This was back in the 1960s, but and he did. He came in and I think he gained a kind of newfound respect for the country. And if you just let people in and you have no border policy and no way to vet or protect your borders, then you're inviting all kinds of evil and wickedness because even the Israelites in Bible times did not allow that. They didn't just let the Amalekites run free all over their land and come in and raid their villages and start selling them drugs and stuff. No, they went to war and wiped them out. So that's kind of a silly argument. Yeah, the Mozambique, man, Africa, they've had some, I don't know, man. I saw yesterday they had a church that was, I think like 19 Christians were butchered in that church. I mean, I mean, it is just Africa right now is ground zero for um, anti-Christian persecution. Tyler just sent me a text. Okay, Tyler, I'll check it out. All right, let me go to the questions real quick. Got 17 minutes. Let's see here. Where does it start? Okay, today. I will just say that Friday night, I mean, Lee and I did the oh man, it was like 3 hours. It was long. Then we had like, I don't know how many questions we answered, but it was I was mentally exhausted at the end of it. I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. Uh I'm just looking back to the chat here. Dave Bowen, yeah, Phoenix. Jeffrey, you go to church with Tim and Brandy. How cool is that? I would love to go out to Pastor Bowen's church sometime. I'm just reading some comments. Let's see. Yeah. All right. I know I'm all over the board tonight with stuff, guys. Tom Elsey just did a camping trip. That's good, man. You guys need to, I mean, love having you here, but man, don't do it at the expense of your family or don't do it at the expense of a relationship with a, spouse or whatever. The most important things we can invest in this life is other people. I mean, that's the only thing we can bring with us into the next life. So, um, sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments here. Oh, good. Let's see. Okay. All right. Question one. Let me do like 3 or 4 questions. Let's see. Uh, this is from Justin Foy. Do you see a shelf life to our literal interpretation of these times in the fig tree? Yeah, I do. Lee's of the mind that if this time comes of this window, the 7 years prior to the 2032 or the 2033, that we could be starting the metric from some place we weren't really anticipating. So like instead of the crucifixion, we start it from the first Gentile that's saved. Um, Consequently, we could also go to like, um, gosh, man, I cannot hold a thought tonight for anything. I think he said that, if we were to start from the first Gentile, that would add a couple of years on. But, honestly, I know that, I just can't see this 2,000 years coming and going without there being some major, I mean, talking major prophetic um, event. And to me, the only thing it could be is a rapture. But is it possible that they start to build the construction of the third temple before we're raptured? I mean, I think I read tonight that and this is from Western News Daily or whatever. It's Western Business News or whatever it is. So it's not. It tends to lean more on the sensational side. So they are taking quotes from certain Israeli leaders that think that it could start by the end of 2025. Some kind of construction. So all I know is that the Dome of the Rock and the Al Aqsa Mosque have probably got to go. Um, in fact, I'm pretty positive they would go. So, but then again, I don't know. Maybe that's part of this whole Abrahamic accords, where they, bring everybody in and it's kind of kumbaya. Everybody worships on the same holy. I don't know, because there's still so much animosity between the Arabs and the Jews there. And then not only that, Israel's gonna, if they do hold this vote to recognize the Palestinian Authority as the legitimate leader over the Arabs living there, then what happens is Israel's going to annex Judea and Samaria almost summarily, yeah. They would do that summarily because just as a response to what the UN does. So I think we're going to see a lot this year. And I know Tyler and those guys are more 2025 than I am. I think I'm more 2026. So next year I'm going to be the one that's on ginned up, all that, like ready to go for this. So okay, do I see a shelf life? I kind of do. And Tyler and I did a program on this a while back, and I kind of went beyond 2033. If you remember that, I can't remember the name of the video that we did, but we talked about, I think it was the final two or something, but I had a chart that I went beyond 2033. I said, okay, well, let's just play this out to the end, say 2070 or 20, wherever the end of the, no, it's 2075, I think, is the end of the 50th Jubilee. And what are all the metrics that we would use to kind of gauge where we are beyond 2033? And I think we kind of have to throw all that stuff out the window, because now that none of that stuff matches up anymore, and we're kind of starting over, it feels like. So I don't know. um I feel like 2033 is the shelf life, though. And it could be that 2033 is like the midpoint. That's a possibility too. um I Now, if 2033 is meant to be the midpoint, let's just play it out. And I haven't, fact checked this against the lunar calendars or the feast dates or any of that other stuff. But let's just say hypothetically, 2033 is the midpoint. So then the beginning of that would be 2030. And at some point prior to that, you would have to have the rapture. You would have to have the battle of Gog and Magog. You would have to have the beginning of them to clean up all the weapons and from the destruction. And at a certain stage, there could probably be a possibility that a peace accord or some type of a Daniel 927 thing kind of arises after the Gog Magog conflict, because now you have new power brokers in the world. Europe's going to rise, is going to ascend. Most of the militant Muslim military age males that are marching and trying to destroy Israel, they're wiped out. So Islam now is kind of lost its militancy. The United States would be in disarray. it still would exist. That something would emerge out of that, but it wouldn't be the United States anymore. It'd be something different, not bound by a constitution or anything. And so there's a lot of things that could happen between a 2025 now and say a 2027, 2028 rapture that still puts you know 2030 as the start time, keeping 2033 at the midpoint and then ending in 2037 with is it 2037? Yeah, 2037 as the second coming. If the rapture starts at 2030, that is a possibility. I don't see it, but I know that that's certainly more reasonable than anything else beyond 2037. Beyond that, so I know you guys are like hating me right now for saying 2037. Sorry. Marvelous Mom, absolute. You know what? I You're right. I implicitly trust Randy's calculations. I've never met a person more obsessed with numbers than that guy. I'm not even heard of another guy that's that obsessed with him. That, but in a good way, right? And he's also got that kind of engineer's mind to tie these things together. And I my head swims when he's explaining all the dates and the jubilees and the cycles and the lunar cycles and the 19-year what do they call those cycles? It's got a weird name, but yeah, I should just pull out his article and just read it. Just use that as the maybe I will one night. Deanna, is that a sad face because I mentioned 2037? Moko is like, yep. Let's see. An asteroid could hit the Earth. Yep. I mean, so many things could happen between now and then. So if 2020, let me just honestly say this: if 2026 comes and goes, and it could, then I would think that somehow things still have to be tied in with no later than 2033. So either it's at the midpoint, or it's at the beginning, or it plays some function or role in that because it's too significant of a date to just go by, as if nothing happened. Deanna says yes. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I am not trying to rain on anything tonight, anybody's parade. I would love it to be tonight. It could happen right now. I'd be completely happy. No, actually, I wish it had happened when I got home with my kids, but be with them and then it happens. So that is a best case scenario. But I could also see a gap in time. The rapture could still happen this year, and then there's a couple of years that there's stage building that's happening. The collapse of the United States, the destruction of the Turkish, Iranian, um, Russian coalition, and the millions of men dying there, the cleanup operations. I mean, there's still. I don't want people to completely lose heart after 2026 because you know what? I mean, we it could this. I definitely think the rapture is this decade. I am 100% sure. Me personally, that I believe that. I think it's incredibly likely between now and 2026. It seems to have the strongest arguments for it. But Tyler and I and anybody else kind of looking at the 6,000 years, the days of creation modeling the 6,000 years, and we realize where we are. We're at the end of that 6,000th year. Then it seems to me that we're right there on the cusp. I mean, we're not going to know exactly, but we know we're in that window. We know we're in that time frame. So I will just say this: I'm 51, so I'm not like a spring chicken, but a lot of the older prophecy teachers that have been teaching from say the 80s till today, I think they're more jaded than the younger groups because they've just seen all these kind of hypes come and go, and so you just kind of naturally get jaded. We all do. We just kind of come to expect certain things from certain segments of society or certain events or whatever. For example, a horrible, crime happens, and if the perpetrator is anything other than a white male, we're probably not going to get to the bottom of it. I mean, that's almost a given now, or it was for many, many, many years. Um, if it's a white male, we're going to know everything about him probably within the first couple hours. It's just the way the media operates nowadays. So, point is that we just come to expect certain things, right, from the world we live in. So, we get a little jaded too, you know. And I'm not knocking the older guys, because we stand on their shoulders. We only see as far as we see because we're on their shoulders. But you know, it's inevitable that people get jaded if you're teaching prophecy and you're talking about the soon coming of the Lord, and you began doing that in the 1970s or the 1980s. It's going to happen. Um, not to every believer. I get it. There's many of you out there that have been watching since then and have been dutifully and waiting for the Lord, and you just never lost that glimmer in your eye that He's coming back in your lifetime, and I have that same hope and that same expectation. So I'm not saying that because you're older, you can't, you're jaded, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's teachers that teach Bible prophecy that seemingly have become more and more jaded as time goes on. That's all I'm saying. Okay. From Catalin, uh, blessed AKA, okay, AKA Dora. Question: Who are the Bible nerd ministries? I I think I heard of these guys, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that I think we watched a program that Lee was on, but I can't remember what they were called. And maybe that's those guys. I'm not sure, but they seemed pretty good. They were younger guys. Um, I know like Todd Hampson and Jeff Kinley are really gearing up to focus on the youth, and I think that's way it's been needed for a long time. I came to know about Bible prophecy in my youth group. And of course, I drifted later in life because of my own selfishness and my own desires and my, whatever sinfulness. But like, I was exposed to that in my youth, and we went to one prophecy conference, and that's where we ran into. I was talking about the Korean Doomsday Cult. These guys were like protesting a prophecy conference in Dallas, Fort Worth area, and I thought it was the pre-trib research group, but it turns out it wasn't. It was some other group that met in. I guess this year was 1990. Must have been 92 or 91 because I was still in high school at the time. But yeah, man, they were protesting, holding signs, and it was crazy. But that was kind of the first exposure I had to other views outside of the Bible prophecy. Okay, let's see. So to answer your question, I don't know who the Bible Nerd Ministries are. I'll check them out after this. So, Disciple Makers question concerning Revelation 21:27. Is this just a way of reiterating the judgment is prior to the New Jerusalem, and so evil will be dealt with, or will there be people on earth not allowed in? Well, let's go there. Revelation 21:27. I think I know the passage it's referring to here. It says, okay, so we're talking about the New Jerusalem. Yeah, but this is even after the great white throne judgment. Um, but there shall be, this is the passage here, 21:27. But there shall be no means enter it anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. I see that more of an assurance that that we don't ever have to worry about anything ever happening again. Like we don't have to worry about being in the New Jerusalem. Again, this is after the millennial kingdom, after the great white throne judgment. Now we're what we would call eternity future, right? Um, but there will be nothing ever in the future. I mean, there's not some other beings or whatever from some other unknown universe that come in one day to the our future eternity and wage war against us and try to take over. There's nothing, none of that stuff's ever going to happen in the future going forward. I take that as a promise that its place is going to remain pure and undefiled forever. So I would take it that way. Because at that point, I mean, even looking at where we are in the book of Revelation, I mean, it's after the great white throne judgment. So the Satan, all wickedness is cast into the lake of fire, even death and hell. So I look at that as a promise to the future. Like there's nothing. I promise you, there's nothing that's ever going to happen here. Nobody's going to ever come in and destroy this place or sneak in like Satan snuck in. Like the serpent. No evil is ever going to make its way through there's no soft underbelly to the New Jerusalem. There's no way in for evil. Okay. One more, and then I'm going to hand this off to Tyler. Question: is it your belief that we currently in the church age of Laodicea? Thank you in advance. Yeah. So I do think that the way I view the church ages, that not only were they real churches in John's day, but because of the order they're put in and because of the characteristics of the churches, they seem to mirror up pretty closely to the ages that we've seen over the last 2,000 years, when particular branches of Christianity or Christendom are dominant over everything else or over the other forms of Christianity. So we know for the Middle Ages, like the Catholic Church dominated for like 1,000 years, most of Europe and even further and beyond. So I would liken that to the Thyatira era. And when you read through Thyatira, you can start to see the Catholicism in there. And maybe that's, I don't want to say that it's me reading it into it, but there's things in the text that just seem to line up perfectly with what Roman Catholicism promotes. And so, but I also think that the last four churches, because there's a reversal at the end. In the first three churches, the letters are written like this, and I think the end of it, it's let me get there. So, like for the church of Ephesus, the first church, it says, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give to him to eat the tree from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. So you have the challenge from Christ. He who has an ear, let him hear. We see him use that same language in the Gospels too, but here it's like, he who has an ear, let him hear. This is the challenge. And then the promise, if you overcome, is that you get what's at the end of that, right? It says, to him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Well, who's the overcomer? Well, John talks about the overcomer. The overcomer is the one that believes in the one whom God sent, which is Jesus Christ. That's your overcoming. It's not by how righteous a person you are. Because again, our righteousness is nothing. It's filthy rags. We are nothing. Even the very best we can do cannot hold a candle against Christ's righteousness. So we are even the very best we have is not even close to being anything worth significant, which is why it's all about what Christ did and not what we do. Our job is to believe. And once we are saved, and we are now in the process of sanctification. So justification is a one-time event. Sanctification is a lifelong event. Glorification at the end is a one-time event. It's in this process of sanctification that we are in the process of becoming more Christ-like in all the facets of our life. And that includes being repentant for sin. That includes um, uh, adhering to the gifts and callings from God, that we listen and we are obedient to follow those things. So if God had called me years ago to write and I said, I don't want to write, that sounds stupid, I want to do something else, and I just kind of went on my own path, and I wasn't being obedient in that moment to that calling, that opportunity that God was giving me. So that's an example, right? Now, Ephesus Smyrna, and Pergamos all have that same ending that way. But then you go to the church of Thyatira, and it says, let's see here. And he who overcomes keeps my works until the end. To him I will give power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron, and they shall be dashed to pieces like the potter's vessel. So he's quoting there from Psalm 2. And then he goes on, as I also have received from my Father, and I will give to him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So the challenge is then flipped with the promise to the overcomer. And so the last four churches have that ending flipped on it. Why is it flipped? I have no idea, but it seems to indicate some kind of a change. So I think these last four churches are all in play right now, and they are all under varying stages of, but I do think the overwhelming predominant uh, expression of the church here in these last days is, at least in the Western half of the world, Western civilization, is the Laodicean church, the spirit of the Laodicean church, where we're consumed more with materialism and in the things in life than we are with the spiritual things and the things that will last forever. All right, guys, I really thank you for tonight. I thank you for your patience and your attention and your conversation and your fellowship and your super chats and just your everything that you guys continually give to this community. More than anything, what I pray for this community is you guys love each other, you're kind to each other, and that you show that love and kindness to everybody that you encounter. And it's hard. It's hard to be nice and to love people especially when they're unlovable. But that's what we're called to do. And we could have the greatest. I could be the greatest teacher of prophecy. I could be the greatest expositor of Bible doctrine and theology, and I could have the fanciest webcast and the best guest on and the best dressed, best background. I could give the most perks. I'm always sending out free things to the audience. I could all that stuff. But if I don't have love, I'm like this like clanging cymbal that's just annoying, right? I'm just like this thing that's making junk noise. And I want to tell you guys, I know we say we love you each night, or each time we say goodbye. I love you guys, all that, but I really do. I really do care about you guys, and I pray for you. And I hope that I don't pray for everybody individually. I don't have that kind of mental bandwidth, but I just for the tribe, the audience here, you guys. I pray that God continues to reveal Himself to you daily, and that He uses you mightily in these last final moments, and that you will receive uh, the rewards that come with just faithful service. And I know many of you feel like you're trapped in your homes, you don't get out that much, or you can't get out. Or look, again, prayer is incredibly powerful, and when we pray, we're praying that's leaving our lips or our mind out, going in, stepping into eternity to the throne room of God. And He doesn't exist in time, right? So he exists apart from time because He created time for us. So our prayers then are going into the state where it's now into the eternal realm. So who knows that prayer working backwards and forwards in time? We just don't know. But we're called to pray for each other and to love each other and to be kind to each other. And it's hard. It's hard to be kind. It's especially hard for me because I've been hardwired to be this, to warrior, fight, battles, all that stuff, military for so long. It's just ingrained in my nature. And that's something I have to wrestle with and to learn to be loving and to be kind. It's been that's been a hard journey for me. But thank you guys for coming out. KG, I'm gonna frame that. It's awesome. But thank you guys for being here tonight. Now, if you got time and you got the energy and bandwidth to keep going, go check out Tyler because I'm checking off. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday night at 6. Be a little earlier, different conversation. And pretty excited to have this with Dante, and he's got a good channel. So check him out, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. God bless you. And Maranatha.